Hello guys, hopefully you were able to complete the parallel lines notes pretty well yesterday. Today we're talking about perpendicular lines. Just an idea of what perpendicular lines look like. I'll draw them in two different colors. Perpendicular lines are going to intersect at a 90-degree right angle. So they're going to cross in like an X type motion. And they'll always have a right angle between them. So they're only ever going to be perpendicular lines if their slopes are negative reciprocals of one another. So just to start this off, we're going to identify the negative reciprocal of each slope. Just a reminder, negative, I really hope we understand. If it's positive, the negative version of it is negative. If it's negative, the negative of a negative is positive. And reciprocals of one another are going to be like 1 becomes, oh, that's a bad example. I'll go back. Let's see, 1/2. The reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. The reciprocal of 4/1 is 1/4. Okay, so that's just before we got started. Now, actually getting into it, the negative reciprocal of negative 1/4. So, if it's a negative, it's going to be positive. The reciprocal of 1/4 is 4/1, or it is going to be 4. Okay, for the next one, I have m equals 3. First thing I'm going to do is make it 3/1 and add a little positive in front of it. So, if it's positive already, the negative part, it will be negative. Reciprocal, 3/1 becomes 1/3. Negative 1/3. All right, and my last example here, I have 2/3. It is positive, so my negative reciprocal is going to be negative, and then I'm going to flip it, 3/2. All right, so any perpendicular line is going to have the negative reciprocal slope of the original slope. Now let's get into some examples of this. We're going to do the same thing we did in the last one. So if I have y equals 1/2 x, and I'm given -3, +1, actually, I'm going to use red. -3, +1. If my original slope is 1/2, my slope perpendicular, that's a little symbol for perpendicular because it looks like perpendicular lines, is going to be negative, and then I'm going to flip it. 1/2 becomes 2. So my new slope is -2, and I have my x1, y1. So putting this in point slope form, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. I'm going to use my perpendicular slope. So y minus y1 is 1. My perpendicular slope is -2. X minus x1 is -3. So that's going to become +3. I am going to distribute my slope. -2 times x, -2x. -2 times +3, -6. And my last step is I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So y equals -2x, -6 plus 1 is -5. So I'll know if they're perpendicular so long as this is the negative reciprocal of my original, and it is. Now, in example 2, we're going to do the same thing. I have 6, -2, and I have my original -3x minus 1. The m of my original, I'm just going to put an O on top, okay, is -3. So my m of the perpendicular line is going to be the negative, so negative becomes positive, and the reciprocal of 3 is 1/3, so positive 1/3. Now I'm going to label my point, x1, y1. Going to write out my point slope form. Y minus y1, x minus x1. And then I'm just going to start plugging things in. Y minus negative 2 becomes y plus 2 equals 1/3 x minus 6. Now I'm going to distribute. Y plus 2 equals 1/3 times x is 1/3 x. 1/3 times negative 6 is negative 2. Now I'm just going to subtract 2 from both sides to get y by itself. Y equals positive 1/3 x minus 2 is negative 4. All right, nice and simple. Now, moving along to the next example. Now we're going to see if they're parallel or they're perpendicular. Now remember, if they're parallel, they have m equals n. If they're perpendicular, m equals negative 1 over m. Okay? So now, we are going to solve and see if these are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Can I use some different colors? And we're just going to find the slopes of all of these. So, to start with my line A, y equals 4x plus 2. My slope in that one, m equals 4. It's already in slope-intercept form. I don't have to look for anything. My line B, I have x plus 4y equals 3. I have to put it into slope-intercept form. So to do that first, I'm going to subtract x from both sides. I have 4y equals negative x plus 3, dividing both sides by 4, all 3 points. Y equals negative 1/4 x plus 3/4. So my slope in the second line, m equals negative 1/4. All right, and in my last one, I have negative 8y minus 2x equals 16. To start, I'm going to add 2x to both sides. Negative 8y equals 2x plus 16. Then I'm going to divide all 3 points by negative 8. Okay, I'm left with y equals negative 2 divided by negative 8 is negative 1/4. X, 16 divided by negative 8 is negative 2. So my slope in this one, m equals negative 1/4. Now, looking at this, I have a couple things. Perpendicular. The negative reciprocal of 4 is negative 1/4. So, line A is perpendicular to both line B and line C. Also, these two have the same slope, so lines B and C are parallel. Okay. So, two lines can be parallel. They can also be perpendicular to the same line. That's no problem. As long as if they're parallel, they have the same slope, and if they're perpendicular, they have negative reciprocal slopes. So it's okay that line A is perpendicular to both line B and line C. That's no problem at all. And it's okay that lines B and C are parallel. Okay? Last part. Showing off our skills, write an equation of a line that passes through the given point and is parallel to the line. Parallel. So we want our slopes to be equal. M equals M. Just a reminder. Slopes are equal in a parallel line. So, in my original here, slope M equals 1. And I have x1, y1 to write my equation. Now I'm going to zoom in so I can write it. So, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. I always have to write out my equation so I don't forget where things go. Y minus y1 is positive 2 equals m, my slope is 1, times x minus x1 is 3. Next step, I'm going to distribute. So y minus 2 equals 1 times x is x. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. Last step, I'm just going to add 2 to both sides. Nice and simple. Y equals x negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. So y equals x minus 1. Nice and easy. All right. For my next one, I have to solve for y to find out what my original slope is. That's okay. So I'm going to divide all 3 parts by 3. Y equals 2/3 x minus 1. Okay. Now that I have that, my slope on this is 2/3. My point, x1, y1. Just going to plug it in. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Y1 is 4 times 2/3 is my m. X minus x1 is negative 6. Minus negative becomes plus. Okay, now I'm going to distribute. Y minus 4 equals 2/3 times x equals 2/3 x. 2/3 times 6. 2 times 6 is 12. 12 divided by 3 is 4. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Okay, so y equals 2/3 x plus 8. All right, nice and easy. Notice, in this section, we really want to read our directions, because if they're asking for parallel, you don't want to use that perpendicular slope, because then they're not going to be parallel lines. Okay, last part. We're writing 2 equations. One that is parallel, and one that is perpendicular to the given line through this point, no matter what type I'm using. So, I'm going to start. I'm going to start with parallel. Okay, so I'm just going to write this out. My slope in this original equation, m equals negative 1/2. Okay, so in my parallel line, m equals negative 1/2. My point is still 4, 3. So I have x1, y1. Now I'm just going to write it in point slope form. I'll write out my equation. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. If I can get my pen to write, I'll plug everything in. Y minus 3 equals negative 1/2 times x minus 4. I will distribute. Y minus 3 equals negative 1/2 x. Negative 1/2 times negative 4 plus 2. Last step, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So, y equals negative 1/2 x plus 5. Okay, so this is the line that is parallel to the line above. I'm going to fix a typo here that I didn't realize. This is supposed to be negative 1/2 x plus 9. Oops. All right, now I'm going to write the equation that is perpendicular to this line. So the slope of my perpendicular has to be negative. So now it's going to be positive. And then the reciprocal. 1/2, the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. Positive 2. Now I still have my 4, 3 is my point. So I have x1 and y1. I'm going to write out my point slope for them. And then I'm going to zoom in. Plug everything in. So y minus 3 equals 2 x minus 4. If you notice, this first step is mostly the same except for my slope. Now I'm going to distribute. Y minus 3 equals 2x. 2 times negative 4 minus 8. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Y equals 2x minus 5. Negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. Okay? So that is how we would do parallel and perpendicular. Make sure when you have these questions, you read them because you never know which one they're asking for, especially because we may mix it up. If you have any questions about this lesson or yesterday's lesson, make sure to leave a comment on the Google Classroom or email myself, Ms. Kirschbaum or Ms. Gates. Make sure if you have questions, it's not, I don't understand anything about this lesson. We cannot help you unless you tell us exactly what is confusing you. Okay? And we'll answer anytime between 8 and 3. Hopefully this wasn't too bad.